My fiancé, who is 32 years old, wants me to buy her a new wedding dress that costs over 50% of the total wedding budget after I already bought her an $8,600 dress. I'm marrying the love of my life, who is a member of a Native American tribe and lives on a reservation in my city. I was involved with this tribe before I met her, buying an older woman a mobile home to place on her land when her daughter went to prison, leaving her 3 grandchildren to raise while she was living in a 15-foot travel trailer. She managed to get the kids out of foster care because of this. This helped us get the council to approve having our wedding on the reservation. I'm paying for everything and have a $60,000 budget. There will be traditional dancers, drummers, and a traditional feast, all catered by women on the reservation. We have an 80-person guest list. The only people coming from my side are my mother and my adult nephew. Yes, I'm spending my money in the reservation, trying not to be obnoxious about it. As I said, I've seen the poverty many of them experience, and I love that my wedding is bringing money to the community. My fiancé said she has dreamed of her wedding since she was a little girl. I could care less about weddings, to be honest, so I've let her be the only bride. I'm going to wear a black gown with tuxedo elements on top to kind of stand in as a groom. This way, all the attention will be on her. My only rule was that the budget was $60,000 firm, not a penny more, and I hired a wedding planner she had to work with to keep everything within that budget. She went out with her girlfriends and chose a beautiful $8,600 dress. She loved it. It was purchased and fitted great. It's 3 months until the wedding, and we're doing it in November because it's way too hot to have a summer wedding out here. She was continuing to get things ready with the tribe and the planner. One of the tribal elders brought up her dress. He suggested that she should wear a traditional tribal gown made by one of their artisans. She sat me down to tell me something serious and explained that she couldn't wear the gown she bought. She needed a traditional tribal gown. I told her to get a quote from the artisan, and maybe we could get a partial return and/or sell the other gown to cover it. The artisan's price? $33,000. It's going to be covered with beadwork, and she needs to get started now. I said, well, it's a good thing we already have a gown. She said she would not humiliate herself and dishonor her tribe by wearing the wrong gown. I replied that I can't approve this cost. It would throw the budget out the window. She says I have millions of dollars, and this is our wedding, and I'm being ridiculous. Yes, I have money. I live off 4% as someone semi-retired. I have this money because I adhere to the budgets I set. Now she's not talking to me, except to remind me every day that if the artisan doesn't start now, she won't have a dress. I don't know what to do. Am I being the bad guy here? To add, I've noticed some confusion and just want to clear something up. The elder isn't saying she is required to wear the traditional dress. There have been other weddings with non-traditional dresses, like her mother's wedding. The elder just suggested that since this is shaping up to be such a significant event for the tribe, it would be appropriate for her to wear a traditional dress. This is part of why I'm saying that it's still an option for her to wear the original dress. Anyway, she is with her mother right now, and I've asked the wedding planner to meet me on the reservation on Monday to see if I can get more information and talk to the dressmaker, because, as many of you have pointed out, it doesn't make sense for the dress to be so expensive. Some suggest I'm being scammed, but I think it's more of a case of not explaining the situation to the dressmaker and asking for something too extravagant. I'd also like to consider the option of renting the dress. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. You've been generous, but now the tribe and your bride are seeing you as a cash cow. Maybe if the elder feels this is so important, he should put up the money for the dress. The artisan isn't by any chance a close relative of theirs, is he? If this crazy demand is a deal breaker, I say cut your losses and run. They will drain you dry. Comment 2. Tell the tribal elder he should pay for the dress if he wants someone not related to him to wear a traditional dress. Tell your bride that the catering will have to be cut by $33,000 or she can uninvite 70 guests to save that amount of money. Now, for the update. 3 days after my last post, I met with the wedding planner and dressmaker at a local hotel conference room. The room was all beige and had that weird hotel smell, but I didn't care. I wasn't there for the ambiance. The dressmaker went in depth about the traditional gown, which I knew was going to be expensive. She talked about the handmade embroidery, materials sourced from the tribe, and how it would take months to create. I took notes, trying not to stress too much about the budget. The gown required multiple fittings, which also jacked up the price. Great, just what I needed to hear. I asked about rental options, but she said traditional gowns are rarely available for rent. Of course they aren't. It's not like I was hoping for a miracle or anything. The wedding planner suggested a compromise, incorporating elements from both the original dress and the traditional gown. I thought that was a good idea, so I decided to present it to my fiancé later. That evening, I figured some homemade dinner would create a peaceful atmosphere. I cooked and set the table nicely, thinking this might help. But when I brought up the compromise, my fiancé crossed her arms and frowned. Not exactly the response I'd hoped for. She insisted that her identity as a member of the tribe was being diminished and that the traditional gown was non-negotiable. I tried to explain that the budget wouldn't allow for the gown and other wedding expenses, and well, that started a pretty heated argument. She accused me of not understanding her culture and belittling her desires. She wasn't wrong there, but come on. The argument escalated, and she stormed out to stay with her sister for a few days. Called it. The next morning, I got a text from her sister saying they were discussing options over coffee. I could only imagine the options they were discussing. At the reservation, I met with the elder from before. I explained the situation, hoping she'd have some guidance. The elder listened patiently and suggested that a community gathering might help resolve the conflict. Inspired by this, I proposed a family dinner at my parents' house to discuss the wedding plans openly. My parents were more than happy to host, so I called them. We agreed to invite my fiancée and her family. The day of the dinner arrived, and everyone brought traditional dishes to share. It was like a potluck, but with a side of underlying tension. Everyone gathered around the table, sharing food and small talk, but you could feel the vibe. During dinner, I brought up the dress situation again, presenting the compromise idea. My fiancé's mother jumped in, supporting her daughter's wish for the traditional gown. She was really gonna go there. The conversation shifted, and voices started to rise as family members debated the importance of tradition versus budget. My dad tried to mediate, suggesting we find a middle ground. His classic dad move. My fiancé's sister then proposed a fundraiser within the community to cover the gown's costs. Oh boy. This idea sparked a heated discussion, and the reactions from both families were all over the place. The next day, I got a call from the wedding planner who mentioned potential sponsorship from local businesses, as in, businesses would help pay for the dress. I considered the possibilities, but felt uncertain about the implications. I finally reached out to a few businesses to gauge interest in sponsoring the dress. I got some positive responses, which was great, but my fiancé and I continued to have disagreements about the dress. She was all for it, and I was still trying to figure out if we should be asking. We decided to revisit the community gathering idea, hoping to build support and find clarity. We needed something to make sense of all this. Edit. The community gathering turned out to be a massive potluck event. We had to explain the situation to everyone, and there was a lot of back and forth. In the end, everyone agreed to contribute a little money, and local businesses pitched in as well. We found a new dressmaker who was cheaper but just as skilled. Am I the idiot for refusing to go on a family trip without my fiancé's seeing eye dog? My parents, 60-year-old male, 48-year-old female, planned a mini 3-day family trip as they do every year. They invited both my fiancé, 28-year-old male, and my younger brother's girlfriend. I've been dating my fiancé for over 2 years, but we got engaged just about 3 months ago. My brother, 20-year-old male, has been dating his girlfriend since 9th grade, so she's like family. For my fiancé, that was not the case. He didn't join any of our previous family trips when we were just dating. This was going to be his first time joining us. I was so excited. Let me start by saying this. My fiancé's dog is not just a pet. She's a seeing eye dog. He is fully visually impaired and he needs her. She's not just our pet, but also basically his mobility aid. She's also the sweetest, most calm dog you will ever see. Long story short, when my mom found out we were planning to bring her with us, she was surprised and asked me if we really thought bringing that dog along was a good idea. I said, of course, what else did she think was going to happen? Apparently, that was a ridiculous idea. They love her, but certainly don't want her on the family trip. I told her I'm sorry, but that's not an option. If she wants us to be there, that dog will also be there. Every time we went on a trip with my fiancé, she was always there and never caused an issue. My mom told me she respects that. We can spend our couple's trips however we want, but this is a family trip and we must respect their wishes. I didn't know what to say to that. The only thing I could say is, I'm sorry, but we can't attend if they don't let us bring my fiancé's seeing eye dog. Then she got furious. She started calling me names, told me I'm being ungrateful, disrespectful. I didn't want to argue with her anymore, so I just hung up the phone. Then my dad called me to fix things. He said it's just a 3-day trip, and I could very well guide my fiancé if I wanted to. I'm the one making things harder, and even if he can't join, I should still come. This made me lose it completely. I told him if my brother's girlfriend is going to be there, my fiancé should absolutely be there, and I'm not making anything harder. They are the ones making this harder, and honestly, this is textbook discrimination. My dad completely dismissed me, telling me to shut up and that if they were bigots, they wouldn't have let me get engaged to him. They always let him bring her to family dinners. This is the one time they asked for a favor. I should have been more understanding. He said I should be ashamed for making my mom cry when all she wanted was a small trip with both her kids. Now I feel as if I'm a horrible daughter. Am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Tell your parents how profoundly ashamed you are of their disgusting attitude. Would they demand someone in a wheelchair leave it behind and be carried around? Your fiancé's dog is a piece of necessary medical equipment. They are demanding that he blind and humiliate himself for no reason other than their own controlling bigotry. Please do not subject your fiancé to spending time with monstrous people like this. Even if they apologize, they have shown that he will never be fully safe around them. If you still intend to marry him, they can't be a big part of your life going forward. Comment 2. Let you get engaged to him? Girl, not the idiot or even close to it in this galaxy. Their ableism is showing and they are all defensive about it. Also, name-calling is so unnecessary and is bad behavior. If this had been a regular dog, I would have told you in a second that you were the awful one. But this is a medically necessary seeing eye dog. They're not asking for a favor. They're asking for something awful, like asking someone in a wheelchair just not to come with their wheelchair for the weekend. Now, for the update. A few days after the fight, I decided to stick to my decision about the trip. I was really upset about my parents' behavior, and I didn't want to go back on what I had said just because they were being difficult. I told my fiancé about the situation. He was really understanding about it, like he always is. He told me he knew how difficult my family could be, and that he supported my decision to not go without his dog. It was really sweet to hear that from him. I just wish my family could be as understanding about him needing his dog. It seems like they just don't care that he can't see without it, and that it's always been fine on trips before. Like seriously, what's the big deal this time? A few days later, my parents called to talk about the trip. They wanted to sort out the issue about the dog. My mom was still saying the dog wasn't welcome on the trip. She kept saying that this was a family trip and that we needed to think about family dynamics. I couldn't believe she was saying that after what she had said to me just a few days ago. My dad was no better. He was suggesting that I rethink my priorities and that maybe I was making this a bigger deal than it was. I stood firm, but I felt really hurt. I told them that I couldn't come without the dog. My mom was furious and accused me of prioritizing the dog over my family. Like, really? What family? The one that doesn't care about my fiancé's needs? My fiancé suggested that we make our own trip instead of going on this one with my family. We ended up planning a weekend trip to a nearby cabin. I was really excited about it. It was going to be our first trip alone together, and I was really looking forward to it. The night before our trip, I got a text from my brother. He was inviting me to a family dinner to talk about the situation. I said no, telling him that I had other plans. He kept insisting that family should come first, even accusing me of not caring about family. During our cabin trip, I got a call from my mom. She told me that the family was still going on the trip without us. I found out that my brother's girlfriend was already making plans for their arrival. I was really upset to hear that. It just felt like they were trying to rub it in my face that they were going on this trip without us. My fiancé suggested that we just enjoy our time together and not think about family issues. The next weekend, I came home to find a family gathering happening. The atmosphere was really awkward when I arrived. Everyone was there, except for me and my fiancé. My brother confronted me about not going on the trip with the rest of the family. His girlfriend made a snide comment about my choices. My mom brought up the dog again, suggesting that I was too attached to it. I firmly stated that the dog was part of my life and family, and I wasn't going to apologize for that. My dad suggested that I was being unreasonable and that I should apologize to the family. I was done with all of this. I told them that I needed some space from them. My brother argued that this disconnect would affect family relationships. My mom threatened to stop inviting me to future family events if I didn't come to my senses. A week later, I got a call from my brother asking to meet. He said that our parents were upset and wanted to meet with me. I reluctantly agreed. At the meeting, my parents expressed their disappointment about my stance on the dog. My brother accused me of creating a rift in the family, and I just couldn't believe how selfish they were being. They were the ones who were in the wrong, and yet they were trying to make me feel like the bad guy. Edit. My fiancé and I have talked a lot about this family situation, and he's been really supportive. We both agree that I need to set boundaries with my family. I told my fiancé that I wanted to marry him in a private ceremony with just us and our dogs, and he loved that idea. Am I the idiot for refusing to name my daughter after my wife's favorite name because of my sister's trauma? My wife's number one girl name is Josephine, nicknamed Josie Joy. She wanted it to be our daughter's name, telling me it felt just right for our girl. The name Josephine has a not-so-great history in my family. My biological parents fostered kids and adopted some. My siblings, the kids who were adopted, all had their own pasts. But I have a sister who now has a different name. She was Josephine at the time of her birth, and it was her name until she was 6 when the name was changed before my parents legally adopted her. It was a very complicated process for my sister's name to be changed. There was a childhood psychologist, a trauma therapist, and a psychiatrist involved in stating that it was in her best interest for the name to be changed because of the trauma she had surrounding her name. For context, she was 5 when she was removed from her birth family and has memories of them using her name. They also called her Josie. My sister still has some trouble with the name, but she only hears it occasionally. She never tells people to use another name. But our family knows that it can trigger some memories for her and unpleasant feelings, putting it mildly. She is still in therapy, but this isn't something that is hugely controlling her life. But there's a difference between hearing it occasionally and hearing it all the time, because someone in the family has that name. My wife knows it was my sister's name, but not everything about the trauma surrounding it. She knows it was bad enough for professionals to get involved to help her get the name formally changed, but doesn't know the details. I know about why. I also won't share it all here, because that's my sister's story, not mine. So I told my wife that I was vetoing Josephine and Josie Joy. I told her it wasn't a name I could live with, knowing it would remind my sister of her trauma, and that I also had a very negative association because of my sister's past with it. My wife was disappointed and asked if we could talk to my sister about it first. I told her my sister would give us her blessing so she wouldn't burden us, but I would feel horrifically guilty. She said okay, and we have a short list of other names now. But she had talked about the name enough, that her family was calling our daughter Josephine already. When my wife said Josephine wasn't the name, they asked why, and she told them a name should be agreed on by both, and we weren't on the same page, so we'd choose one we both loved equally. My wife's parents took me aside and asked me why I would deny my wife this name when it means so much to her. They said we could have worked on a middle name I loved. I told them the name had a bad history for me, and I couldn't get past it. They told me I was being selfish. When I talked to my wife about it, she told me she wished I could have done more to try and make it work, but she'd talk to her parents and tell them to back off. Am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Honestly, kind of you are the jerk. Not for the name, so much as for not addressing it in advance. It got to the point of her family calling the baby by that name and seeing your wife so excited about it. If you knew it wasn't going to be an option for you, it shouldn't have been on the list. Now it seems like you pulled the rug out from under your wife's feet, which you kind of did. No one likes to see the light die from their child's eyes, which is why they were asking. Comment 2. No one is the jerk. You are not the jerk, but it doesn't sound like your wife is either. She has a right to be disappointed, and she is, but she's also not being a jerk about it. Sounds like she's being very understanding. The few replies so far seem to have forgotten that no one is the jerk is a vote. I do agree, though, that her parents are, but let her deal with them as she said she would. Now, for the update. 3 days after the whole discussion about the baby name thing, my wife, Emily, told me she was going to visit her parents for the weekend. She was real serious about talking to them, saying she wanted to clear the air or whatever. I asked if she wanted me to come along, but she insisted it was better for her to handle it solo. Looking back, I should have insisted more, but I didn't. That night before she left, I noticed she was on her phone a lot, texting someone. I asked her who it was, but she just said it was a friend. I figured it was just a friend, but it felt off. So the whole weekend, I kept myself busy by organizing the nursery. Like I painted some shelves, put together the crib, the usual stuff, just trying to keep my mind from wandering. On Sunday, I got a text from my sister Sarah saying she was feeling overwhelmed and wanted to talk. We met at this local diner, and she started pouring out her heart about how hard it was dealing with the family dynamics around the baby name. I told her about Emily's visit to her parents and how I thought it might not go well. Sarah seemed really concerned that Emily's family wouldn't get it, wouldn't understand the background behind the name. During our conversation, Sarah suddenly got a text from someone named Jenna, and she got all tense. I could see something was up, but I didn't pry. After our talk, I went home and found Emily's phone on the kitchen counter, buzzing with notifications. Curiosity got the best of me, and I glanced at the messages. I saw a bunch of texts from her parents, pretty much telling her to stand her ground about naming the baby Josephine. One message really caught my attention. It was like, just tell him he's being selfish. I was shocked. That evening, my mom called, worried about Sarah. She said Sarah had been acting distant and withdrawn since all this name drama started. I told her I'd check on Sarah again soon. When Emily came back, there was this noticeable awkwardness between us. I brought up the texts I saw on her phone, and she got all defensive, saying her parents were just trying to help. She claimed I wasn't being supportive. We started arguing again about the name. I mentioned how her family was ignoring my sister's feelings. She snapped at me, saying I was overreacting and that it was just a name. Feeling backed into a corner, I told her that if we couldn't agree, we should think about other options, like using a different name entirely. She got really upset and stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room, feeling like crap. The next day, I stopped by Sarah's house to check on her. She opened up about feeling overshadowed by Emily's family and their insistence on the name. It hurt her. I told her I was going to confront Emily's parents directly, and we arranged to have dinner together. At the dinner, it was all smiles and fake pleasantries, but I could feel the dismissive attitude. I calmly laid out the impact their pressure was having on my sister, hoping they'd finally get it. Emily's dad just scoffed, saying it was just a name and she should get over it. I felt this anger rising in me, so I decided to spill the beans. I told them about the text I saw from Emily's parents, how they told her to call me selfish. The room went dead silent. When Emily's mom started yelling at me about disrespecting family traditions, I lost it. I told them I wouldn't let them name my daughter without considering everyone's feelings. I stormed out of there, feeling like I just set off a bomb. That night, Emily texted me, asking if I was serious about what I said. I told her we needed to make a decision together and put the whole name issue on hold indefinitely. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.